conversations we went to, they talked about how important it is. And like for his piece, it carried out most of the performance because like when he switched over, especially when he said Marcus, I guess that's the other guy, Victor,
Yeah.
and then his when he changed it, he was like Victor, and it was like great because you understood like his feeling and stuff like that.
Yeah. Those little things that you can do non-verbally become so important and so
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah.
My favorite one is he goes to turn the page and he says, wait, I should tell you about when I found out she was blind. It's like, I'm gonna get ahead. Oh no, I gotta back up. He didn't, it wasn't that he had to go to the previous page to do that. That was a technique that he used to sort of like, whoop, let me back up a second, I'm getting ahead of myself. And it was so cool. He does, I think, great nonverbals. They're just, he does a lot of stuff with his tongue, especially early on when he's like checking her out by the elevator. It's like, oh, Boyer's gonna love that one. You know, but he's doing all this like a guy hot for a woman kind of nonverbal stuff. And just like you can see things like page turns and how you hold the book become really important. And that takes time. He looks so comfortable. That book is an extension of him. You know. And when you first start doing interp, it's not natural to hold that book and to turn those pages so precisely. And I mean, there's lots of little tricks that you can do. One of them is to have extra pages in your interp book that will add, even if you're only doing one piece, you know, you only need 5 or 10 pages or whatever, you might have 20 empty pages in there to add weight to it so it will hold in your hand, it will kind of stick in your hand better, and you don't want it flapping around like a seagull. So there's just something as simple as holding the book. You would think, oh, it's just holding the book. But it can make all the difference in the world in what the audience sees. And ideally that book almost goes away and then sometimes it shows itself. You see some little technical thing done that adds a little something. But yeah, his nonverbals are great. And that adds so much. Yeah. And you get a sense that he is that guy who likes this woman and is kind of hurt that she likes Victor, and he's not. He's a college student like you. He's just, you know, he's not that guy. But he characterizes him so well that it's believable. And he does her voice, which for a guy beyond puberty is not easy. You know, you've gotta change the tone of your voice, the pitch of it, and again create this different character. It's not just I'll talk like a woman now. This is a character who speaks a certain way with a certain cadence, a certain rhythm, and all of that stuff is what you're trying to develop over a period of time. Were there things in there that you saw that you have questions about? You think, is that okay? Or just that you would like to call attention to?
If we found like a longer piece, could we just cut little pieces of it, or is that more like for it?
No. Yeah, chances are you're gonna have to cut your piece. Unless you find something, like there is a whole genre now, sometimes called short fiction or flash fiction, which I think was invented by forensicators. These little things that can be performed in 10 minutes. But most short stories are not written to be performed in 10 minutes, and you will have to cut them. And so, yeah, you're gonna be taking little bits and pieces from here. I think it's important to analyze the story pretty thoroughly and get that theme or argument that you're trying to make, that you're going to put in your intro, before you start the cutting, because otherwise you're just cutting randomly, and what you want to do is you've got this point that you think overall this story makes. Now there's too much stuff for me to do in 10 minutes, so what you do is you start going through it line by line, and once you've identified the point you're trying to make, does this line support that point? And if it doesn't, it's out. Is it helping us advance this larger point we're trying to make? And that can be really painful, because if you love a story, there can be a great scene in it that you just love. It's so funny, you want it to be in there. But the part of the speech, the part of the literature, the message that you're trying to focus on, that doesn't support, it doesn't add to it, and you have to cut it. And it can be really painful, because cutting, you like the whole story, but you don't have time to do the whole story. So yeah, you can cut it. I mean, there's an excerpt where you just take a scene from a larger story. It's kind of self-contained, or a cutting where you're taking a little bit from here, a little bit from here, a little bit from here, trying to maintain the integrity of the original storyline by just giving us small bits of it rather than the whole thing. But you're going to have to do that. And just remember, when you're doing that, every time you pull a line out, somewhere there's an author rolling in their grave. That's their masterpiece. And you're just like, oh, we don't need this paragraph. We don't need this page. No, but you're doing it's just, that's a character development. But you only got 10 minutes. So yeah. Yes?
One thing I noticed, I don't know if it's a difference between college forensics and high school forensics, but I know in high school forensics, we have a lot of prose pieces that are more like third person in the story. They're more, this seemed like his story. Like,
Yeah.
it was very believable that you would hear him talking with his buddies or something about this. Versus, I mean, I don't know if that's the
No,
way the college style.
No, it's a great
Or-
issue to raise because some stories are in the third person or the second person or the first person, and the first person are more popular. There is an immediacy, like what you saw there, where it's him talking as him in the first person. There's just a directness to that is compelling in performance. You will find some people think you have to do first person. You don't. There was a time when third person was much more popular, and then people started to do first person stories, and they were being more successful, and people follow that trend. An interesting thing happened with one of my students a couple of years ago, because there are all these norms. People will say, oh, you gotta find something new and fresh that no one's ever heard before. Like, don't do classic literature that everybody's heard or read. And don't do third person, that's one of those, don't do third person. And she just found this story, and she wanted to do it, and it was by an author who I can't think of, who's very famous. The point is, it was third person, and it was a classic story about 40 years old that most people have read. And she did it, and I told her, okay, you got this whole third person thing going on, this is gonna be difficult. And she's like, I don't care, I just wanna do it. I just like this story, I wanna share it. And some judges, when they heard it, they said, you know, this is third person, and that really doesn't work well, like as if she hadn't realized she was doing a third person piece. But other judges said, oh my God, thank you for doing a third person piece. That's so much more challenging. This is so cool. I'm so glad you selected this classic piece of literature. I love this story. And she was very successful with it because she did a great job with it. So the norm is first person. Third person has additional challenges because you don't have that immediacy. But again, if you love the literature and you can work really hard to bring it to life well for your audience, it can work. It doesn't have to be one or the other.